Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're here with the first sort of kind of official trailer teaser for the Lord of the Rings. I feel like we've been talking about this for quite some time now. In interest of avoiding spoilers, of course, I've been avoiding as much as possible for this. I did see a few of the images that were released before, but I skipped the teaser to the teaser that I think they released a week ago because come on, internet. The teaser is already a teaser for a trailer. We don't need a teaser for the teaser for the teaser. Yeah, so here we are. The first teaser for Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. Yeah, massive fan of the Lord of the Rings films. All of them. Well, let me not say. I enjoyed all of them. I didn't love the Two Towers as much as everyone else appears to, but overall, I thought it was a fantastic franchise. I've not read the books, so the extent of my knowledge for Lord of the Rings is, solely reliant on just the movies. The Fellowship of the Ring, of course, I think is my favorite. I know that's a bit controversial, if for no other reason that it kind of set up things but didn't really conclude. But I still think just the introduction to the world. I'm a huge fan of world building, and I think the Fellowship of the Rings just did a fantastic job of that. And I'm a very boring guy, so I don't mind the long trek, adventure that they went on. That for the most part didn't accomplish anything. Yeah, so love the movies. And yeah, very little. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I have no knowledge of the books. I've dived into a few bits and pieces here and there, but I haven't read any of them in their entirety. And I, of course, did enjoy The Hobbit, and I know that's that's blasphemy for a lot of people. And I understood all the criticisms that it received. It was almost too polished to the point where it felt like it was more like watching a CG in a video game than it was live action. I think it lost so much of the dirt and grime that you could feel in the originals. But I still enjoyed the story overall. I thought they were pretty good movies. Not the best, but they were still good movies. The Desolation of Smaug was my favorite, and I was rooting for Smaug all the way. So for this property to now finally see on Amazon, I was a bit skeptical. To be honest, I was a bit skeptical going in because I know there are, from what others have said, there are a few good shows on Amazon. Honestly, I've not. It's not been my, streaming platform of choice for anything really. So I can't list anything that I've specifically gone to Amazon to watch just because it's on Amazon. I'm sure maybe there is, and people would probably recommend a few things that I should probably check out on Amazon Prime, but I just have not watched anything on there as yet. But yes, this might very well be the first because it is something that I am in fact looking forward to. I know there's been a lot of backlash with lore changes in the lore and so on and so forth. I won't get into too much of that. But from the images that I have seen, it has gotten me excited where I wasn't really excited about the franchise before. So I'm really looking forward to see what they can do. And Amazon, let's be fair, they have a lot of money to throw at this. And I think it's one of the things that if they do get this right, it could change the landscape for streaming shows going forward. I think in a way Netflix did that before, but they're still somewhat held back by budgetary constraints. If this manages to knock it out of the park, and we see how good it looks just from the images, and I think they show some images of the orcs and so on, and it looks great. So if it is that this is successful, I can hope that Netflix is a bit more flexible when it comes to putting budget into some of their series, especially for the first season, because that's usually the weakest point. Because they don't have as much confidence in a property, they don't put as much budget in it, and then it ends up not looking as great, and so people don't like it as much. The Witcher is a good example. fortunately, where The Witcher is concerned, it was a known entity, it was a known property outside of that. But the first season, the CG and the practical and Henry Cavill's wig just did not look great. So I'm hoping if this is successful, that it will encourage other streamers to take a risk as far as fantasy is concerned, and giving them a bigger budget if nothing else. All right, that's enough talk. The first teaser for Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Let's check it out.
There was a time when the world was so young. There had not yet been a sunrise. But even then,
it looks beautiful.
light.
It's a lot like that tree in Elden Ring, except better.
Call to me, lands far away.
Wow, stunning.
Elves have forests to protect. Dwarfs their mines. Men their fields of grain.
That's all we
But we
get.
orphans have each other.
For I must now
Men suck.
this wandering day.
We're safe.
They aren't.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel.
Galadriel, okay. Younger.
Put up your sword.
The enemy is still out there. The question now is where?
She doesn't age
It is
technically.
over.
You have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen
Wow.
what I have seen.
Legend
Darkness
begins.
will march over the face of the earth. It will be the end, not just of our people, but all peoples.
A lot of this makes no sense to me because I've not read the books. I'm not too familiar with the lore. I'm just recalling a lot of names and places from the films. But nothing is being spoiled for me, which is good.
We either move forward or we die with it.
This could be the beginning
Set,
of a new
the set
era.
design, set pieces, they look fantastic, man. Sauron.
Away I must wander this wandering day.
September 2. That was amazing. A part of me initially when this entire thing was announced, I had hoped that I think there was a bidding war going on between different streaming services as to who would actually get the rights to this, and a part of me had hoped that Netflix would have gotten it. But I'm not sure Netflix would have taken the risk, especially with them cutting budgets on a lot of animated stuff right now, and in general, really. I don't think they would have taken the risk of investing as much in the first season. It's usually where Netflix shows are concerned, and a lot of other streaming services. It's not just limited to Netflix, but they are still the #1 streaming platform currently. So I use them as an example. But where Netflix is concerned, their model tends to be, let's spend as little on the first season as possible and see what the response is, and then we'll scale things up a bit. This looks as though we're diving in immediately and we're seeing the landscape, we're seeing the world of men, of elves, of dwarves. They're not waiting, they're not exploring a small corner and then decide, okay, depending on how well this does, we'll expand the world later on. No, you're being dropped in the middle of everything, and the world just feels enormous. I'm trying to recall the last time I watched a series, especially for the first season, and I've gotten this feeling of being lost, because the world feels so expansive, and I don't think anyone has accomplished that before. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of the trailer, I think this could be game changing. I think this, if it's done really well and if it's received well, it could have as big an impact on the industry as Netflix did when they shook things up. But it looks stunning. The set pieces, the design, the characters, the practical effects, everything just looks amazing. And it reminds me, it's funny because again, because The Hobbit gets so much hate because it looks almost too clean in a weird way. It looks almost too CG, almost too fake. This appears to be somewhere in the middle ground between The Hobbit and the original Lord of the Rings movies. It's somewhere in the middle because you do get that effect where everything just looks a bit too stunning and but at the same time it's not off-putting in the way that The Hobbit was. Here, yeah, it's breathtaking, guys. It's breathtaking. As far as the characters are concerned, I know a lot of people were hesitant because they haven't said a lot about what they'll be exploring exactly in this, and the trailer didn't really give away much. Again, I'm not entirely familiar with the lore. I will probably, I don't know if I'll read the books yet, but I'll probably go back and watch the films just to kind of refresh my memory, assuming that we even meet any characters here. Not necessarily so much for the characters, but just to familiarize myself with the different worlds, the different races, different locations, and so on that we may have been introduced to in the past, just in preparation for this, because I am next to science fiction. Science fiction for me is forever at the top, but just below that is fantasy, and so I'm just really looking forward to this. I think The Witcher has done a good job in kind of sating my appetite up to this point, but they've not managed to accomplish what I had hoped as far as the world building. Things almost feel a bit too rushed with The Witcher. As though they didn't want to spend too much time, or they wanted to get to the root of everything as quickly as possible to engage the audience. But I always appreciate movies that takes the time, especially in the first 1, 2, 3 episodes, to introduce you to the world that you'll be exploring. And The Witcher hasn't done that, even though it's 2 seasons in. You're moving from location to location to location, but you don't feel as though the world is as expansive as you're being told it is. And they've managed to accomplish that with just this trailer and showing a few scenery and different locations and different people. But it works, it works. Yeah, there wouldn't be any spoilers here for me because I'm not familiar with a lot of the characters that would have been mentioned. But I like that because that means that I'm going in with a fresh perspective. Yeah, there are a few names that I did recognize, of course. Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to this. I'm so in. Yeah, finally something to watch. I've been bored, honestly. A lot of the stuff that's been going on now just hasn't hit that spot for me yet, but I think this will. It's a September 2nd release date, so it's a good ways off. But when it does drop, I think even the most ardent of critics who've been pushing back against certain changes that they've been making, I think they'll quickly forget about all of that. And I know a part of the criticism that has been put out against this series is, I don't know, people of color actually being here, actually existing in this world. But look, it's and I won't spend too much time on this, but just to quickly address it because I'm sure people will still be talking about it. But this is a world of fantasy. It is fiction. I don't think it's too far-fetched for people of color to exist in the world. What matters is the stories that the people have to tell. As far as this world is concerned, it's elves, dwarves, and the world of men. Humans, just humans, one race. It's just humans. I don't think the color matters in the grand scheme of what this fantasy story is about. And if you're okay with dragons and orcs and tree dwellers and so on existing, yeah, then I think I don't see why you know, where you draw the line with people of color existing within this world. A lot of times what people say is that this is, you know, a period piece, but it's not a period piece. There's nowhere in history that any of this stuff exists. It's not a period piece. It draws inspiration from that era, but it is not historically accurate. So yeah, that's as far as I'll go on the subject of, you know, people of color existing here. But I would hope that by the time this comes out, we'll have moved on past all of that, and we're focused on the amazing story that I'm hoping that they will be telling in this series. And so I'm definitely looking forward to this. Amazon, do not disappoint me. All right guys, be sure to post down below, let me know what your thoughts are on the first trailer for Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.